Everyone this evening to the Richmond Planning and Zoning Commission. Clerk, you call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shue,
Yes.
Commissioner Francis.
Here.
Commissioner Short,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Perkins.
Here.
Commissioner Miles.
Here.
Commissioner Estelle.
Here. If all the commissioners had a chance to read the minutes from October the 16th, I'd like to get a motion on it, please.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 16th, 2024.
A second.
Commissioner Shue,
Yes.
Commissioner Francis.
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Miles.
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle.
Yes.
That's the motion.
Next on the agenda is a zone map amendment for Richmond Development Company, LLC, property located at Carriage Gates Drive, current zone AG, proposed zone R1C. Mr. Worley.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Russell Burley on behalf of the applicants. For the record, here's a copy of the page of the Richmond Register where the public notice ran. Whoever was here at the last meeting with a bunch of pins. All right, so this is property that you all are well familiar with. This is this zone change application is an extension of the Carriage Place subdivision off Berea Road. We started with this in '23, and I think going back even the last time that you all saw, the first time that you all saw a preliminary plat for phase one was September of '23. And then we've continued on through a couple of phases there. So this is, well, Mike's not on. You know, I watched the hearing from September today, the same thing, I started without the mic on. All right, we got me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Don't start singing now.
And do we have a clicker for the, I can use? You got it, thanks, Tyler. So, you see the first slide here, this is just off the PVA, so it's not entirely accurate with but the first phase, the first three phases that you see there are what you've already approved and what's been developed out. What we're looking for is that next phase going over into the ag land to the right as we go into the east there. There's about 130 acres left of the original 230 or so. We're talking today about 55, 56 acres, asking for an R1C zoning. So what this would do is basically extend the southern portion of the subdivision that is all that R1C and just continue to extend the R1C out for another 60 acres. The R3 to the top, that's not showing any sort of development there, that is currently under construction but was sold to another entity. But we're going to address a little bit of that too. So Tyler, if you give me the next one. So here's the 56 acres there then that we're discussing, and you'll see that the end of the Carriage Place R1C section that's already there has a temporary cul-de-sac stub there that was intended for this development to go on into this section when we initially came to the project. And so that's where we would take it on the next stage, which is what we've intended all along, and I think what we've discussed since the beginning. And so I want to talk through some of that because I know of some, and rehash some of the conversations we had then about this development. So Tyler, hit the next one, then the next one. All right, so that is the first phase that has been built out now that we're looking to extend. And again, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind to show that stub out right there that was left to go on to into the new section. Next one, Tyler. That is the top portion that was done primarily R2 that has been developed out. And then the next one. And that is the R3 section that was approved and that is currently being developed. And if you'll recall, particularly Ms. Perkins, you may remember a lot of discussion about trying to find additional access out of the R3 section in this neighborhood. And Kevin, if you could show that top portion right there, this section right here, which was always a hopeful and conceptual connectivity back up into South Point neighborhood, that has now been approved and is under construction. There's a box culvert that's been installed, and so that R3 property that's part of the Carriage Place subdivision, it now has an additional access out, and will not its primary access doesn't have to always be Carriage Place. So we just wanted to point that out so that we could keep with kind of how we always intended and hope that this would all develop out. Get the next one, Tyler. So in that September meeting of 23, this is what you all were discussing, and that is now what has been completely in its final stages. That was an early stage. In its final stages, approved and has been either built out or is currently under construction, particularly in that R3 section. So what we are looking to do then is to go the next step, which is what the discussion was. Yeah, okay, that was if we go back one. Yeah, thank you. What we're looking to is the discussion that was had then was when we were talking about approving this and access onto 25 is what about when we move on to the next phase? And I think we're now ready to do that, and that's where we're going to go from there. So I put all that up there kind of as a refresher of where this subdivision has been, where it's going, and why we think that this is in agreement with the comprehensive plan and a good move moving forward. Hit that next one, Tyler. Okay, that's kind of a difficult picture. I tried to lift that off of the engineering. This is from the amendment to the development plan of the South Point Apartments that's trying to show that road being built through there and would then connect to Southern Cross there. Yeah. And then the next one, Tyler. I put this up here because I think the discussion will probably go there. This is an exhibit to the State Highway Traffic State Highway Traffic Engineer's encroachment permit that was given to this development, which shows the conceptual moving on into the next phase. There is the encroachment permit onto Berea Road. It's the build out that you've seen and approved already, and then you see from the stub at the far east end moving into where the State Highway Traffic Engineer already assumed that there would be additional development when they approved that encroachment permit. And again, they've just got some conceptual drawing there, but the conversation at that time was an additional 200 to 300 units. Even though that's not what we're doing just with this phase. We anticipate this phase would be smaller because it's only 60 acres and has to be engineered. But just by way to show that the State Highway Traffic Engineer was already aware and ready for this when it was the encroachment permit was permitted. All right, Tyler. If you would then just go back to the PVA section, and then we'll go from there. So we'll say all that to get you oriented with where we are, and kind of refresh your memory on the history of this project. At this time, we're just extending R1C, be single family, going on through, which would certainly be in agreement with your comprehensive plan. It's providing additional housing, and it suits the surrounding area well. It's surrounded either by the Army Depot or a neighboring property that is also zoned single family, or the extension of the property that we have here. And then again, this is ag land inside an annexed part of the city limits that's been annexed since I believe the 98 or so. So it's certainly suitable for development, and its existing zoning would be inappropriate given its urban nature. So for all that, I think it justifies a zone change, but I assume that you all will have several questions, and I thought this particular one, since it's an expansion of what we've already done, maybe a little bit just interactive back and forth instead of me laboring on and on with a presentation. It was probably better. So, Mr. Chairman.
So you say that's already been annexed in?
Yes, all of that's annexed in.
The ag part?
Yes. Yes, sir.
As I remember this correctly, wasn't this set up almost as a mirror to what's already been done, like that kind of the first phase where you basically had the single family duplex apartment, and then this section now is like apartment duplex, single family?
Well, you're remembering back right in what we tried to do to compare to the existing South Point neighborhood. Because the R3 that's being built right now is adjacent to what was existing R3. The duplex is kind of on its own with green space, and then you've got single family. So it was intended to kind of mirror that neighborhood, and what we want to do now is just extend that single family on through.
Gotcha.
By the way, this is a public hearing, and we have anybody that's kind of wants to oppose this, they would be able to speak
Absolutely.
for it. Mr. Williams? Come, would you?
I'm Jimmy Dale Williams, and I want to offer a couple of words of encouragement to some friends of mine. Just say, go Perps and roll Tide. They'll know what that means. Since I've been in this case, I've tried to look up the annexation of Pumpkin Run Farm, which I think is that purple part. And we've made an open records request and gotten records from the city that says that there's no records that shows that that's been annexed. I think the comprehensive plan or your map shows that it's a R1 in any event. Here's the problem with that. They're asking for R1, C3, button up against R1A. And I think that's sufficient reason to deny the zone change at this time. The other thing is, with the number of homes and residents there, we don't think there's enough ingress and egress. Now, you'll probably hear Pumpkin Run Road, and some claim that it's a city road, county road, whatever. There's no record of that. Pumpkin Run Road back through there, where it runs between these two pieces of property, I think is a private easement. My client has that in his deed. He has an undivided one-half interest in that property with Richmond Development, and I think WGT. But those are the two primary bases for denying the zone change. I've got records from the city that shows that I don't think that's annexed, Pumpkin Run.
Frazier?
I've spoken with Mr. Williams, and I'm doing some research as to the annexation of that farm that's shown in purple. So it's not the property that's actually in question tonight for the zone change. It's the neighboring property that Mr. Williams represents the owner. It's shown there in purple as R1A. I've gone back through our records. As of yet, I've not found that it has been annexed, but I'm going to have to go back further to when we took control of Lake Reba itself. So I'll be doing some homework there, working with Mr. Williams. But it is not the property that is at issue tonight for a zone change. What's at issue tonight for the zone change is the blue teal property there.
So that doesn't come into play with anything tonight?
Well, certainly you can take Mr. Williams' comments into consideration. I don't want to say that, but he's not referring to the property that's up for question right now.
No, that's right. What I'm saying is my client's property, if it's in the city, and I'm not sure it is, I don't think it is, shows on the map as R1A. And they want to butt up this zone change, which will be a R1C, which is higher density than the R1A. And if anything, this zone change should be at least compatible with or the same as R1A.
Is there any development that's been done in the purple?
Say again?
Is there any development on
No.
that property right now?
No.
And if there is, how do they access Berea Road,
Pumpkin Run,
which is a private road?
that's what I think. Seriously, I've researched that road for 6 or 8 months trying to figure out why people say it's a public road. I don't find any evidence for that. Now, they closed it off, or whoever they is, I don't know. But anyway, the part from 25 into the subdivision was closed off. And then they moved it up into the subdivision. So there's, according to the the city clerk, the new Pumpkin Run Road is in the city and has been accepted. I'm not sure if that's correct. But that road, I think, was still a part of a private easement from Pumpkin Run Farm to US 25.
Kevin, how would that, do you have any?
I would only
Well,
speculate at this point until Mr. Frazier has done his research, but from my recollection, this portion of Pumpkin Run, just from here to here, from my knowledge, was replaced with an upgraded street. And very loosely recollecting that at that point, from this shut-off, the access came out, or here, basically upgrading the passage. Now, as far as Mr. Williams is concerned, I'm not sure what recordation achieved that or did not achieve that.
I missed that last comment. It did what now?
I'm not sure whether or not the recordation achieves, the closing until Mr. Frazier concludes his research as far as right here. 'Cause that's Pumpkin Run, or Pumpkin
That's
Run,
right.
as they say. And as this development expanded and in and around, they upgraded from here to there. And that was along the Pumpkin Run route. So it got upgraded to a city street through that development. And then I believe since this passageway was somewhat impaired, not completely, but somewhat impaired, now the access is now provided through the creation of these streets to allow ingress and egress in and out. And essentially, Mr. Williams, at this point, I would assume that as you enter into these streets, you will tie into perhaps the easement for the owners back here for the extension somewhere along this route, which is what I believe you're referring to as the easement of way.
I think the whole thing is an easement from Pumpkin Run to 25. That's what I think. I think that's what the records show. Now, that somebody submitted a plat and said it was something besides that is beside the point, and it got approved. Nobody was up here to tell you that it wasn't at that time, but I think the records show that it's an easement, and it's not a public road. I don't think it has been in, I've been around 76 years. Don't think it's been during my lifetime. And if you ask people, they'll say, well, yeah, that's county road. Says who? Well, they ask somebody else, it's a city road. Who says? They. Where's the record? That's what you got to rely on. And talked to a fellow today, older than me. He told me they said it. I said, well, but what about the proof? So my position is this. When they upgraded that city street, they affected my client's easement. Now, at this point, some of these folks involved in this development own an undivided half interest in Pumpkin Run Farm with my client. Bought it from his dying sister when she was on her last leg.
Mr. Williams, when this was developed, was there any concern at the time about that road for this other subdivision?
Can't answer that question, I don't know. Nobody asked me, let me put it that way. None of it touched Pumpkin Run Farm at that time. But this one does, that's the significance. And I think you have a little more standing if your property's gonna touch this property.
So do you know if they're gonna develop that or anything, Mr. Williams?
What, Pumpkin Run Farm?
No, that part that touches that,
Uh,
the part that touches that where they develop right there. Are they gonna do anything with it? With
You
the
mean
land?
my client?
Yeah,
I don't know. My client doesn't want to. He wants to keep it in a natural state. Now, I don't know if they want to develop it or not, but they don't think it's divisible. I'm going to teach them that it is. They'll learn that.
Is there any kind of natural division between those two properties? I mean, the creek,
The roadway, the easement.
well,
Just the road.
okay.
I mean, it's just a matter of kind of rooting my client out, you know. If it's not your property, it don't make any difference, you know what I'm saying? But this is his property. It does make a difference to him. Came from him through his father, who owned it for 15, 20 years. Came from the Durhams, who owned it for longer than that probably. And if you look close, there's a dilapidated house on Pumpkin Run Farm that the Durhams lived in. And some of you may remember Richmond Bottling Works. It owned part of it and conveyed it to, I think, my client's father, Fletcher Hale. He died in 2004.
So, just correct me if I'm wrong, so what's developed, it's got all that's kind of sitting right in the middle of it, I mean, sitting around it? I mean, so if they want to develop it, which you say they don't right now, but Kevin, if they want to develop it, how would that come into play?
I'm not sure how
They would have to be rezoned, that would have to be zoned in?
If it is in fact not annexed, it'd be county.
Yeah, it'd have to
properties.
be,
So,
yeah.
you know, until Mr. Frazier completes that, I'd have a hard time answering that question. If you want to speculate, then yes, it would be annexed, and then we would look at access and egress improvements, whether it may be along an existing easement or a new street that could take the place of it in an upgraded situation.
Part of that easement runs along the backside of the golf course. And Pumpkin Run Farm backs up to the golf course.
Backs up to the what?
The golf course.
Golf course.
They
Gibson Bay.
close, oh, this is Gibson Bay's golf
Yeah.
course. Oh, okay.
It does.
Which people like retired doctors to build those palatial mansions to overlook the golf course, you know. Not something with the density of R1C.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if Mr. Williams has dealt with his comments, I can address some of this in the rebuttal, but I would say that a lot of what's being brought up is not relevant to the change tonight, with the exception that it is a neighboring property. So I'd like to have an opportunity to clear up some of these statements, things to confuse their issues tonight.
Well, that's why you give notice to neighbors, so they have something to say about what you're putting next door to them, where you're burdening their property indirectly by having a higher density than what your property is. Now, these people that own the other half with him, They may have something else to say. They may want a junkyard back there. Who knows? But I can tell you what he wants, nothing.
All right, thank you. So to clear up a few things, and with all due respect to Mr. Williams, he is confusing some issues that are involved with the current dispute with the ownership of this farm. His client, Mr. Hale, owns a half interest in this farm. The other half interest is owned by my clients, Richmond Development, and they are in dispute as to how they should handle that farm. They no longer want to be partners, they can't agree, and that is currently in the Madison Circuit Court. And it'll be determined as to how they divide the ownership of that property. It has nothing to do with this zone change, except for the fact that it's a neighboring property. Pumpkin Run Road that he discusses here does not touch the property that we're talking about today in any way, shape, or form. It is an access to Pumpkin Run Farm, 96 Pumpkin Run Road. Pumpkin Run is clear public record, despite his argument, and again, this is part of what's in Madison Circuit Court, has over the years been clearly taken over and used by the city. It was closed off about right here to general public access and rerouted through this neighborhood, as Kevin said, and then back up here to where it then becomes, again, a private access road to this farm. Again, nothing to do with this property that we're talking about. This property will access a public right-of-way through Carriage Drive back to US 25. The only discussion we've ever had about Pumpkin Run Road related to this property is in that September 23 meeting. We talked about if all of this is part of the same Richmond Development property, was developed, that then there may be a necessity or desire to try to tie back in to Pumpkin Run Road at that time. But that would require improvements to Pumpkin Run Road that the city would have to agree to. Again, absolutely nothing to do with this zone change today. The property you're looking at today is right here. It's not this property, it's not this property. Now, of course, this property got notice of the zone change because it's a surrounding property. It is zoned R1A. I believe because it's designated that, it probably was annexed into the city. I would think that he mentioned the Durham ownership. When this property was annexed in 1998, Mayor Durham was the mayor and my dad was the city manager. So the history of all this is closely related, even though this was the Jones farm. This was the Durham and the Hale farm. So R1A versus R1C. In my opinion, the only relevant piece of criticism that was brought to this, because again, this goes through a different neighborhood that's been built out for many years and entirely unrelated. But right now, we don't know exactly where the homes will sit, exactly how it'll be built out, because this is just a zone change phase. This is not a development plan phase. You'll see a preliminary plat that shows that. There will need to be, as your ordinance requires, some manner of buffering between zones. That being said, the density argument that he makes, R1A is 3.6 units per gross acre, I believe. R1C, 5.1 units per gross acre, depending on how you can handle your topography and your buffering and your green space and all that. So that density is not an extreme change. You all know that. This is still single family to single family, and this, again, is entirely vacant property. Not a soul lives in this property. There's an old dilapidated house, an old dilapidated barn. Mr. Hale lives in Colorado. My clients do live here locally, but they do not occupy this property. So there's not a single neighbor here that is being affected by this at this time. And again, single family use to single family use. In that September meeting, Dr. Miller, we had a long conversation about how we were going to have R3 next to our own R1 in our new development, and that you all don't like that. We would prefer a step down to R2, that sort of thing. This is single family to single family. R1C is a good step down to an R1A. That's the type of stuff you all see every day. That's the type of stuff you'd like us to bring. The reason that we were willing to accept the R3 here next to the single family is because this R3 already existed. And that was what Dr. Short and I were talking about the mirroring. So those comments are, aside from there are two different zones, I hope to keep you focused that the rest of that is all red herring. It's not related to this zone change. This all is related to a separate dispute amongst the ownership of this property and whether or not all of Pumpkin Run Road is controlled by the city or not. And again, Pumpkin Run Road never touches this property unless you bring this last little tip right here in. And that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. So, Tyler, if you would go to the one that was the development plan, one more, and one more. Okay. In that September meeting, when we talked about this, the majority of that meeting was actually discussing what happens when this comes in and why we're going to have this stub here, because the concerns at that time were that there was only one access point onto Berea Road.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that at length because we were very concerned about that. And my client acknowledged it and even offered a plan that showed another access point here. But you all agreed with your staff at the time, Philip was still here and Kevin, that that was too close and would create its own danger. And that ideally what we would have is a second access point here to get the R3 out without having to access here all the time. We now have that. That is in place. It's being built currently. It's just been approved. So our major concerns were addressed there. And again, we agreed that if the state highway traffic engineer was comfortable with this, even knowing this was coming in, we would be comfortable with it. While not ideal for the connectivity that we look for in our current developments, because of the way that South Point, was developed, there was no other option. And so we all acknowledged that this would be a good option, even if not ideal. And now, Ms. Miles, you talked about some of the issues in up and down through this way. You live out that way. Part of this encroachment permit, the state highway traffic engineer is requiring my client to put in a right-hand turn lane inbound, which they are doing. And then with the widening of 25 right here, the state is also putting a center lane that would serve for left-hand turn stacking. So our concerns about what the congestion here have been addressed by the state and are part of their encroachment permit. And that's why I showed you that exhibit in the encroachment permit that shows they already acknowledged continuing development. So, all by way of saying, going back to the September meeting, we talked about this as what was coming in the future. And there were even some things said like, we don't want to approve this in a way that down the road we would say, this is not right, we can't do this. That was the discussion. Philip verbatim said, the reason we're talking about this, and if you'll remember, it wasn't even an action item that night, but you all eventually just decided to make a motion and approve it because we realized it's the best we could do. Dr. Miller, you made that motion. And we talked about, we don't want to do this in a way that would preclude this because we all knew this was coming. So again, I tell all that by way of saying this has been a long process you all are aware of. I think this is in agreement with the comprehensive plan. This is a modest expansion of an existing proposal. Again, R1C is single family use. We're not adding any more R3, any more R2, just simply a single family neighborhood expanding for a few more homes. So I think that it's in agreement with the comprehensive plan. Would appreciate your approval and ask you not to confuse the issues with Pumpkin Run Farm other than the fact that it's a neighbor.
Kevin, you got anything else?
No, sir.
Any commissioners have any more questions? Not, I'd like to get a motion on this, please. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I hate to keep you all night, but if the public gets another opportunity, I appreciate the opportunity to sum up or rebut anything that's said.
If Craig Hale didn't own an interest in this property, we wouldn't be here tonight. And his clients own an undivided one-half interest. If you could get any sense out of these folks that they can take their half out on this side where they want to develop, Craig Hale may not have a dispute. We've tried to divide that property that way. No, they want it their way. They say you can't divide it. Now, who in this room believes that you can't divide a 100-acre farm? And their position is, oh, it affects the value. So if they want to resolve this and build whatever they want to build, they can take the half of Pumpkin Run that joins their property. Problem solved. But no, they're going to try to teach me something. I went to Madison High, you know. So they're going to have a problem with that.
Just to say again, those are confusing the issues in a private dispute unrelated to planning and zoning in the city of Richmond. Whether a farm is sold as a whole or divided, there are two separate statutes that a judge will decide which is the most appropriate to split up ownership of a farm. That farm's not at issue tonight. That farm is a neighboring farm that will not be negatively affected by this development. And those issues are not what's before you tonight. I'd ask you to look to your comprehensive plan and to a project that we've been talking about for 2 years or so now and knew that this was coming. I think it is appropriate, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Got any questions, Dr. Miller? I get a motion on this, please.
I'll make a motion, we approve the zone map amendment for Richmond Development Company, LLC, property located at Carriage Place Drive, current zone Ag, proposed zone R1C.
I'll second.
That was Mr. Francis, correct?
Yes.
Commissioner Shu?
Yes.
Commissioner Short?
Yes.
Commissioner Francis?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Miles?
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle?
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Next on the agenda, Kevin, you want to, this would be for the Windcrest Construction Guarantee, October Glory Construction Guarantee, South Point Construction Guarantee, Autumn Place Construction Guarantee, and the Banyans Construction Guarantee, the Beginnings Construction Guarantee.
Yes, sir. Happy to take that over. Windcrest Construction Guarantee Release. We have been working with that developer, my planning and zoning inspector. It is complete. And therefore, it is my recommendation that this body release the letter of credit for that subdivision.
How many of these do you have left? I got about 8.
David, about 8. Some that we've got here. Long story short, they've been out there for 13, 14 years, and we're making a very hard push to clean those up, so we're making headway.
Yeah, you've done a good job, but I was just curious how much we're getting down there, though.
We're definitely in single digits, I can guarantee you that. But if you all would entertain a motion for that release, we will move forward with the paperwork necessary to release those.
Can we make a motion on all of them?
All of
together?
No, one at a time,
Just got
please.
one at a time. I get a motion, please.
I'll make a motion, Windcrest Construction Guarantee Release be accepted.
Second.
Commissioner Shu?
Yes.
Commissioner Short?
Yes.
Commissioner Francis?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Miles?
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Your next one is October Glory. That's located out at Pavilion and Golden Leaf. It's the far back left development. Again, we've worked with that developer, and it is complete. And I would have this body consider a release of that letter of credit as well.
I get a motion on the
Wait,
October Glory.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we release the construction guarantee for October Glory.
I'll second.
Commissioner Shu,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Francis,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Miles,
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle.
Yes.
Your next item is number 7. That will be South Point Construction Guarantee. That's very close to what you see here, or actually you can see it up there. I have with me my field inspector, Mr. David Dotson, back here. If you would grant him the chance to come up, just give you sort of an update on where we are, where we stand with that. We have some numbers and dates for you.
David?
Hello, I'm David Dotson, Planning and Zoning Inspector. As far as South Point goes, it was originally, the final plat came out in 2007. So given the 2 years after for the construction guarantee, that'd be 2009. So it's essentially been sitting since 2009. The actual amount on that is $112,000. And there was, I believe, Kevin actually sent a original punch list, maybe not an original punch list, but the last one before we started grouping all these up in 2016. So it's been a while. And the only thing that it is currently missing is approximately 586 feet of sidewalk along a, I believe it's a B3 lot right at the very beginning that actually connects to 25 and goes down to the single-family residence. And that's the only thing that it is missing as of right now. And just a little bit of information is section 516.2 in the development ordinance essentially just states that no matter who owns a particular lot, after 5 years, the sidewalk itself goes back on the developer to actually install. If there's a vacant lot, I know it's been sold a couple times to different people, various people, but since there's nothing built on it, nobody's actually put in the sidewalk. So development ordinance says after 5 years, it automatically goes back onto the developer themselves.
So is he going to put those in?
As of right now, I've sent a couple letters. One I sent back in August of 2023, and then we sent the actual summons letter in September of this year, and haven't heard anything until recently. And there's been a couple different things back and forth. Somebody said they weren't going to put it in, they didn't have to put it in. But then this was all within the last week or two.
Where can we go with this? I mean, he's not going to do it.
Well, I believe they'll have representation here tonight, but to, just to add some other things here, what you see before you is the original preliminary plat, and this is the recorded final plat. What you see here is a snippet of that particular plat. This is a detail of the street associated with the development. You will notice that this detail calls out sidewalk on both sides. This is the preliminary plat in which the planning and zoning body at that time would have passed, and this would entail that it must have sidewalk on both sides. Here's your final plat. It's the exact same detail located on the final plat which now is recorded in the Madison County Courthouse. Do you have the overall one? This one right here, if you can maybe blow that up. Straight right in there. If you'll notice, there may be conversation on whether or not it's part of this development. This is considered a B3 lot now. It was created with the overall plat along with all of the single-family residential. You have to build a road to get there, which makes this a viable lot. When you apply that detail to this development, it requires that it has sidewalk on both sides. Now, since then, we've got a filling station here that sort of took that into account and put a sidewalk into a development plan. But since we're, if you will, housekeeping, this is long overdue, according to ordinance. So the overall subdivision is in good standing. The only thing missing, as David points out, is that linear distance from here to there that requires sidewalk for the completion of the subdivision, which would then enable us to release the letter of credit. So the question at hand today, certainly after representation has been heard, would be a decision of whether or not we would pull the bond or work with the developer on resolve.
Has Mr. Frazier gotten in on this?
Yes, I'm aware of things. Mr. Williams is here representing the developer.
Harold Bingham is the principal in this LLC, I think it is. And I just have spoken with him today in person and 2 days ago by telephone. He doesn't dispute his obligation to do whatever. But what he's trying to do is preserve this lot and sell it probably after that roadway is completed out through there. We'll have more activity and more people interested in buying that. He would simply like to have enough time to do that, try to sell his lot and get the sidewalk put in. Otherwise, you're going to have a sidewalk that you're going to have bulldozers, tractors, dump trucks, you name it, going across the thing, going to have to repair it again. So that's the dilemma. Does he put it in and tear it up? Or does he get some time to try to sell it, and when it's developed and finished, put the sidewalk in?
I understand what you're saying, but this has been since 2007. So if it hasn't been bought by 17 years, then I think it's probably not going to be for a while.
And I would figure any damage done to that sidewalk would now become the responsibility of the owner, correct?
Say again?
I'm saying, all right, you're saying he doesn't want to put that sidewalk in there because he's afraid it'll get damaged if they're lucky enough to sell that lot. And so why do it twice? Well, my thinking is, when the owner buys that lot, does that sidewalk not become their property? I mean, are they now not responsible if they have the construction company come in there and tear it up and say, well, we got to fix our sidewalk? Oops.
Depends on what the contract is.
Don't know that.
Huh?
I don't know that.
I don't either. You know,
You're representing
we'll know that. We don't have a contract to sell it. But what I'm saying.
I think before we have been a little lenient on that about them building something until after it's built, and then they could put the sidewalk in just for that reason. You know, they would get damaged on there. We have given the contractors benefit of the doubt on that.
I would think that's true, but 17 years?
Well, not only
No,
that,
but he was talking about putting the
Yeah, I think that's a
sidewalk in
good
now,
point,
is what
but-
I'm saying, but
if you
there's
can
no
put the
need-
sidewalk in now and cut an apron in for your entrance on the new project when it comes, you're going to have to put one in anyway. So after 17 years, the concrete should be there. And then you have to put a new entrance in, put a new apron in, and call it a day.
It would have saved money if
I
you'd done
agree.
it 17 years ago.
I agree exactly what you're saying, but in the past,
Right.
we have had the lot, the house or whatever on there, and they've come before us asking could they do that. I understand what you're saying, but it should be in there. But unless they come to agreement with the contractor or buy to replace it,
I
But
mean,
if he puts it
If
in
you
now
will,
and it gets
Mr.
damaged,
If you will, Mr. Chairman, if the sidewalk is installed and the letter of credit is released, Mr. Bingham's responsibility is gone. He has nothing to do with that sidewalk from that point on. That sidewalk is within city infrastructure. So if there is a development plan presented, that gentleman right back there and another one would ensure that if any sidewalk is damaged, that would be the responsibility of that particular developer of that lot. And much like Mr. Francis is saying, you're not going to go in there wild-eyed. You're going to have a development plan, you're going to have a designated entrance. That entrance is often mirrored as the construction entrance, and the rest of that property is safed off. We are not going to allow open entry to a lot with that much road frontage for construction equipment. That won't happen. I can assure you that. It'll be designated for no more than a 50-foot wide construction entrance, and the rest of the sidewalk, in my opinion, would be safe.
and I understand what you're saying, but in the past, we have
Oh,
done
I
that.
understand that, yeah.
I understand what you're saying, it should be done, but I mean, we're gonna have to stick with one way whether we're gonna do it or not. And I understand it needs to be put in.
Well, I think the difference is that in the past, when we've done this, when I've been on the board, is that we get it for a short while. I mean, a year or something like that till the lot's sold. And then we have said, come back to them and said, okay, the lot did not sell, the subject is, but it didn't look like it's going to for a long time. And then we said, go ahead and complete the sidewalk. And that was done. So we don't ever let anybody go to that extent usually. I think this is a whole different thing than be lenient for a short period of time, but, you got to complete the infrastructure sooner or later.
Well, for what it's worth, there's going to have to be more work on that lot before it can be developed. There's a low spot that they anticipate will be filled in by some of the debris that comes off Carriage Place, Carriage Gate, whatever it's called. That's what I understand from my client.
So,
And he's not saying he doesn't have some responsibility here. Don't misunderstand him on that. And it can be done, but he needs some time to try to market that thing and move it. And the sidewalk will get negotiated in or out of that deal.
but the sidewalk needs to be there. It needs to be there regardless, right?
It's my recommendation the sidewalk needs to be there for a public way. Foot traffic, if you come down that side of that street, you have to cross the street at some point, and currently, the only designated crosswalk is down by the state route. This subdivision predates our requirements of having to have crosswalks at other intersections. So this one is not designed for that. It's designed for sidewalk to traverse each side of the road. And with this section missing and a overdue letter of credit that's in violation of our ordinance is why we're here. I think in cleaning up overdue letter of credits according to ordinance should be firsthand. We have a system of 2 years to complete a subdivision. You have the opportunity to ask for a 1-year extension. You also have the opportunity by ordinance to extend the completion of sidewalks up to 5 years. After that, it's sort of time's up, and that's when we need to consider the effectiveness of the letter of credit to complete the subdivision.
For whatever it's worth, I think Mr. Bingham developed that Bryson Way, that area, and I think he complied with everything along the way for whatever that's worth. I don't think he's been up here on any violations for not putting sidewalks, curbs, and gutters or whatever. So he complied with that. He'll try to comply with this. But he needs some time.
How much cooperation have you got in Kevin before tonight from Mr. Bingham?
I'll let David reply to that. David is been my point. If you all recall, I've sort of bragged on David. He's took all this sort of in hand, and we've worked our way through it. So he's been in contact with each and every one of the items before he denied.
There was a letter that I sent August 29th of 2023 that I got no response from. And then we sent the summons in September of this year. And that's when we finally got an answer. But other than that, a week or two ago, then there's been no communication.
Have you left out the part where he came down and talked to you all?
Yes, that was yesterday.
Huh?
That was yesterday, and he was told he needed to appear before this body.
Well, didn't somebody say that we called him back and didn't?
I cannot speak to that, but he was told he needs to come
Well,
to
that's
before
what he
this body.
said.
Okay,
So that's what he said.
okay.
That he came down and tried to talk to somebody, and they said they'd call him back. So it's not like he just thumbed his nose at him.
Mr. Chairman, instead of prolonging the item, I think the consideration tonight is whether or not you want to entertain a deadline, I believe is what's being asked for. And in consideration of a deadline, it's getting colder. So if there's a deadline to be considered by this body, I would caution you on how long you would allow that to be for. And of course, the other side of this coin would be to decide to whether or not pull the letter of credit.
Well, I mean, if we set a deadline, and if it's not met, then we could automatically go ahead and pull it.
It'd been nice to hear from the developer come and tell us when he was gonna have it done, so he can commit to us. He's not even here tonight.
Yeah, I guess he's using the attorney.
Did he give you a date that he could have this completed?
He did not.
I mean, how much concrete could be done in 2 weeks? So don't ask me when you think it should be done, because I'll give you a maximum of a month. There's absolutely no reason it can't be done right now.
Well, for whatever this is worth, this 84-year-old man that's semi-retired, trying to get out of things, like selling this piece of property. He's always been sound in what he's done around here. I've known him for 70 years. And he's got a good reputation for doing what he says he'll do.
Okay, do you
I
want
want to give him a
to put a motion for a deadline or what?
My suggestion, give him 6 months.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not, Mr. Williams.
that's too, he already
I'd maximum give him 30 days,
Yeah.
would be my recommendation, to have the work complete.
Can I get a motion?
Yeah, that's true.
I'll make a motion that we extend this for 30 days, that the work is to be completed and passed inspection by Kevin's office. And if it's not done, then we pull it.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, was there a second? Sorry.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, so the motion would be to mandate installation within 30 days and pass inspection, or it would be pulled. So Commissioner Shue,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Francis,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Miles,
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate one more comment. Indulge me. You all work close with codes. I wish you all would encourage codes to go over here and inspect these buildings at the Glendon Hotel for the birds and the bird manure, open windows. There's not a red tag on it, never has been. This poor fella out here, they put the red tag on him the day his house burned. He's fixing it back. This character over here will let this fall down if y'all don't do something. Now, maybe my client's more important, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next one.
The next item is number 8, Autumn Place Construction Guarantee. I'll allow Mr. Dotson to come back up just to give you a sort of recap on where we are as we did the first one.
All right, Autumn Place is kind of the same deal. We got the final plat in 2007. So again, after 2 years from that would be 2009, when the construction guarantee would run out essentially, unless it was extended. The amount on it is $145,843.03. And that one is a little more extensive than South Point. That one has a pretty good list of things on my final punch list. There are some things, this is actually Mr. Wild's, that was the developer here. And he has done a few things. The major one was final coat of asphalt, and that is completed. But there are some other things, again, sidewalk, meter caps, fire hydrants, landscape buffers. And there has been a decent amount of conversation between me and him, whether it's email or phone conversations, as well as letters as well. I actually sent a letter to him before saying that his guarantee was out and it was kind of time to get things moving, and didn't hear a response for a while. Sent another one, then we kind of started talking, and I have emails here saying, the email was actually to Kevin, this one in particular, saying that, asking if we would give him until the end of 2023 to finish all this stuff. He said he didn't think it would take that long, but he wanted to give himself some cushion. It is now almost the end of 2024, still not finished.
Do the fire hydrants even work?
Fire hydrants work. The issue is just the distance from the bolt to grade. It has to be 18 inches at least, so the fire department can actually do a full rotation of the wrench rather than putting it on there, stopping, putting it back on, stopping again. So that's the issue with that, which essentially can be an easy fix. All they would really have to do is dig a little section around to make it 18 inches.
I mean, that's a life safety issue right there, in my opinion. Second thing, he's not here tonight. Was there any, okay, excuse me, I'm sorry. Because of life safety, I think you can give extensions on other things, but
Same
I
for
mean,
sidewalk.
somebody's house catch on fire out there, and then the excuse from the fire department is, we couldn't get the hydrant open. What do you tell that homeowner?
Then they're gonna come back on us for not enforcing the codes.
I mean, that's a life
So
safety.
I think we ought to give him 30 days too.
Well, I believe Mr. Wild is here. Thank you, David, and now to open the floor to Mr. Wild's comments.
You can come up, Mr. Wild.
Good evening. My name is Mark Wilds. I'm the developer of the Autumn Place. The subject about the fire hydrants, I had emailed, I guess, Kevin about a response to the fact of the elevation of those fire hydrants to the lot. When we developed the property, those were adequately lifted off of the current surface. What has changed is as those buildings and things have been developed and built, the builders changed the elevation of the lot that created the issue where they were too close to the ground. So I don't see that as the developer's responsibility, as I've done that myself on properties that I've built as a builder. And I was held responsible to lift those hydrants because I changed the elevation of the lot to the tune that they would hold my CO until I done it. So every one of the subject hydrants on this property are on properties that I didn't build. I built one property in there, and there's no fire hydrant on that one. So it seems like I guess it would be the codes office that inspected the CO inspection didn't catch the hydrant being too close to the turf, but it would seem to be their responsibility, as they're the ones that changed the elevation. As far as the other things, we've punched out the list with the exception of the fire hydrants and the sidewalk and the buffer. The sidewalk condition, there's a single owner, all those lots have been sold, and there's a single owner that owns the remaining lots, which accounts for probably 30% of the sidewalk left to be completed. He is in Revolution today, currently, to get under construction on the remainder of those lots. So my anticipation would be through next year, he should complete that construction. I know the time has ran, and it's been extensive since the time it was developed, but it would seem a huge waste of resources to install sidewalks at this point, and then next year he goes in and destroys them to build. But that's where we're at on that. And it's kind of the same situation on the buffer. The buffer line between this and I think the development is Persimmon Place or something like that. But most of the vacant lots that haven't been built back up and are part of that buffer. They've been left unchecked for several years, so they've grown up and have more than what would be represented by a buffer already with growth. So we could put our buffer in there and you wouldn't even be able to see it. So again, that's sort of something that would seem more practical to wait till he builds these buildings and cleans the lot up before we install a buffer. If the council would wish us to put the buffer in on the parts that's already developed, that's fine. I don't care to do that. I'm not trying to dodge my responsibility in these developments. I'm just trying to do it in a practical way.
How many feet of sidewalk is still missing? And then the second issue is, I mean, if you're the developer, you're responsible for what comes in and goes out of there, regardless of who buys the lot and the builders. In my opinion, respectfully, it should have just been something that maybe the developer should have stayed on top of these builders.
Well, I do. I've been in conversation with that person that owns these remainder of lots to try to encourage him to get that going as soon as possible. But obviously, he doesn't want to put the capital in a bunch of sidewalks that he's going to ultimately destroy.
Well, I'm also talking about the fire hydrant issue that you brought up. I mean, ultimately, it's your development.
It is, but as I said before, in other developments that I've worked in, and we subsequently changed the elevation of the lot with our build and caused that very same issue. They didn't address that through the developer. They brought it to me because I was the one that changed the elevation of the lot. When we developed it, we had the proper elevation of our hydrants.
Because the developer brought that to your attention at the time?
I'm sorry, I don't
When you were
understand.
building the lots out that you were responsible for.
Correct.
You changed that elevation because the developer came to you and said you need to adjust your elevation.
When we're developing the building?
Yeah, when you were building your buildings.
Yeah, the circumstances of the building, depending on what you're building, will determine.
Right.
Like, the builder's going to determine what kind of elevation and curb appeal he wants from his building.
Yep.
And that may or may not suggest it lifts or lowers.
Right.
And subsequently to that, what is the elevation change to the lot? So they're kind of in control of what they do with that, and if they lift the elevation in such a way that it diminishes that height for that hydrant, he's the one that made the change to it, not the developer.
It sounds like this is an issue between you and the builder, not between us and your respective builders. I think you have to take care of this. All we can do is say, you need to take.
I have no authority or ability to put any pressure on a builder to make these changes. Like I've told you about the situation that I was in. the city took it upon themselves to put the pressure on me by way of holding my CO till I took care of the hydrant. Perfectly understandable, and I was glad to do it. I wasn't aware that it was as simple as digging around it. We paid, as a matter of fact, I'm also the developer of the Autumn Place, or the Banyan, I'm sorry. And we've had some hydrants in there that was on the punch list that he provided me, and there's 3 hydrants in there that I identified to be in low, and I built the houses. I've got the materials ordered to lift those, that actually raise them up, not just dig around them. I've got that material ordered, and we'll be taking care of that forthwith as soon as we get the product to do that. But
I understand what you're saying, but you're the developer. This has gone on for, again, 17 years. And this is what you get when you go on that long. If you'd have closed it out in a year or so, you probably could have caught these people. But now you're stuck. And
well,
we gotta
I'm not the inspector of the properties.
Well, we have to have the hydrants fixed, and we're looking at you to do it. Basically, that's what it is, and where the city is, or else they'll have to do it. So, you know, when it goes on this long, it's too long.
I'm sorry?
When it goes on this long, it's too long.
Yeah.
And the same way with the sidewalks and the other stuff, it needs to be fixed, period. I mean, if you leave the hydrants like this, I guarantee you, if something happens, you're gonna be the one they're gonna come to. Somebody is, the fire department or somebody.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know.
So
how
you're
that stuff
running a
falls
real
out,
risk too
but
on this.
The
So
actual,
I just think that they've asked you to fix it, so I know it's a lot of money, but I don't know what else to tell you.
well, I mean, in light of what this gentleman said, that we can simply just dig around it to get the elevation, that makes it a simple fix. That wasn't the approach we were taking. So, yeah, if there's some hydrants out there and that's the fix you want, then yeah, I'll take care of it.
Great.
So what time period are we talking about?
Within a couple of weeks on that one.
We got the sidewalks, you got everything.
You
Yeah,
can
that's
do
what
the
I'm
sidewalks
saying. What
now.
is he-
How many feet of sidewalk did you say?
I don't have the exact amount, but it's a significant amount.
I would guesstimate it's roughly 30% of the whole. But there's not a street that doesn't have a public walk on one side or the other.
We don't know if this man is ever gonna sell these lots. He said due time to sell them. And
I've sold them. They're sold.
They sold.
They're owned by the person that's going to develop the
they're
building.
gonna be developed, let's
Yes.
put it that way. So I don't know if they're ever gonna be developed, so
He's in the process currently to acquire the funding to get the other buildings started.
and when did he buy them from you?
He didn't buy all of them from me. I sold them to someone, and then he's bought them from that fella. So I don't really know when he acquired some of them. The one lot he bought from me, he's had for probably a couple of years. But it would seem reasonable to me to give him at least through next year to build these buildings. I'm guessing there's 5 lots to build. And if he's launching into construction through next year, I would think he would get that done.
I think it needs to be done.
Well, that's such, if you're saying it's such a large number or such a large amount to put up, it's such a safety issue and an inconvenience for the people that are living there. You know, if they're walking down the sidewalk, they hop out in the street and go along the street, hop up on the sidewalk, go along the sidewalk, hop out the street. You know,
This should have been completed, like Gary's saying, 4 or 5 years after it was done.
I mean, you can tear out a piece of sidewalk and put it back in 2 days. So
Yeah.
I think it needs to be done, and when they build on it and they tear it up, they need to replace it and put it back. That's part of their inspection
responsibility.
for the building. For, as far as the hydrants go, that's a life safety. It has to be done. There's no exception, in my opinion, for that.
Just for a visual, commissioners, we brought up Autumn Place, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wilds, I think the lots that are remaining would be there and this entire section here is what's left to be built out. So, with respect, there would be, I assume, sidewalk all the way around through here and tying in. There'd be sidewalk there tying in and sidewalk perhaps out here. I'm not sure if there's sidewalk out there on.
There is.
Okay, so there would be sidewalk out there.
Which that's the larger, like the pavilion developments part along the boulevard.
But regardless, you still have to put the sidewalks in
The-
once
when-
everything's built. So I would just go ahead and do it, be done with it, and they can deal with the consequences of repairing.
Well, the owner of the lot at this point is responsible for the walk, and I don't think he's not trying to dodge the responsibility of putting in the walk either. And I could encourage him to do that. It's just that it's just an enormous waste of resources because it's most guaranteed to get destroyed during construction, but that's the,
If they're on the preliminary plat,
I'm sorry?
you say on the preliminary plat, if you put down that you've got to put sidewalks there, and I assume that was the case, then it's your responsibility, not their responsibility.
Well, technically, I suppose that's so, but everything that typically around here, that when the builder builds, he puts the sidewalk in. That's, every lot I've ever built in any subdivision, I was responsible for putting the walk in. And it wasn't there. It wasn't that I destroyed it and had to repair it. I had to put it in.
So theoretically, what, if we gave them a time to do it, how much time would it take to do something like that?
I wouldn't really have a response to that, not knowing exactly what needs to be done, nor I think it should come from me.
Come what?
It shouldn't come, from this department on what it would cost.
Well, no, I'm just talking about the time, if we
Yeah.
give them the time, and I'll say that we will. It's a lot to do. And
Honestly,
like I said, it
that,
should have been done, but
that would be a proposal by Mr. Wilds at this point as to what he would feel that would take him.
Well, in the form of a request, I would just request to extend it at least through next year, because the person that owns all of the vacant properties at this point is the same person, has intentions of commencing construction on those buildings immediately. So through next year, I would expect he would have it. If he doesn't, I'll see to it that they get installed.
It seems to me that you're hoping that they get it done in the
Well,
next 12
I'm
months.
saying tonight that if they don't happen in that year, I will take it upon myself to get them installed.
If we say you need to put them in, how long will it take you to do all the work?
To just simply put the sidewalk in?
Sidewalk, hydrants, everything that has to be done.
The sidewalks is the larger picture. I would say if you just launched in to just simply put those sidewalks in, maybe a couple of weeks.
Okay, so if we give you 3 months, you can finish this project. Finish it up.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you, Kim?
I would have no disagreement with that.
I think it's fair we gave the same idea to the one previous. I think it's a fair thing, but not released.
I don't know that if you're implying that that's the course that you're taking, that you're going to say get them in a 3-month period, the season we're moving into is definitely adverse to that kind of timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
can't do it. I don't think you can do it.
You can pour concrete
You
year-round.
can't do it.
We do it every day.
Yeah.
But I would say February, no, end of January, I would agree with you. But with it being November, December, you have time to get this work done.
You can pour concrete through the cold months if you want to put a bunch of additives in it that's going to decay the sidewalk in 6 months after it's down.
After this is over, me and you can talk, and I'll let you know what I do and who I work for, and you'll understand what I say. We do this every day, all year long. So I would agree that February is a bad time to do this, end of January, but you have time right now to get started on this. and make a big dent in it.
Okay. So, I mean, okay, is there discussion over? We make a motion?
You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that the Autumn Place construction be completed within 3 months, and that includes all items. If not, we will obtain the letter of credit and complete them ourselves.
If we could add one thing, and I don't know if Kevin would agree, and in fairness to Mr. Wilds, we could permit weather days, inclement weather days. Would that be
Okay.
fair to Mr. Wilds? And then if he reported the inclement weather days to Kevin, and that would be his extension based on inclement weather.
I would work with Mr. Wilds in that regard.
So if we could add that in there.
Okay. Got it.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Issue,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Francis,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins, Commissioner Miles,
Yes.
Commissioner Still.
Yes.
Thanks so much. And the Banyans.
Again, I'll ask Mr. Dotson up, and we won't take up much of your time. David, if you just let the board know sort of where we're at and maybe the severity of the punch list. And I would recommend that this board take into consideration that Mr. Wilds does have both of these subdivisions. So I would ask for leniency on his next one if a timeline is proposed, that he is all ready to be working for 3 months on his first one. So just consider that. Thank you.
All right, this one is the Banyans subdivision. Again, it's from 2008. The amount that we have for it is $275,000. And it itself does not include any sidewalk, so that's a plus. The biggest thing on it would be head walls. Every head wall needs to be cleaned off, grouted, possibly repaired. And that's the biggest thing on there. Again, we have some fire hydrants. And that's really about it. There's also been some things that he's done in that neighborhood as well, that we've been able to cross off the list, but these are still the big ones that are left.
Thank you, David.
What was that? Discussion on it?
Mr. Wilds, if you have anything you'd like to add.
The only thing that I'm aware of on that as his punch list, I think you mentioned the head walls and the hydrants. As I said earlier, I identified 3 that were low that we've ordered the material to raise those, but again, I wasn't aware that was a fix, so that's something that can be done immediately. The head walls, as we've constructed the buildings, we've kept those, we've cleaned those as we went, but there may be some additional cleanup to take care of, and that's a couple of days' work. So again, I'm not trying to dodge any of this that needs to be done. We'll take care of it.
Okay. Any from the commissioners?
Questions?
So you think you can get this done for, I mean, if you got the equipment, I mean, the material in hand? It's
Yeah,
just a
the
matter of getting it.
banyans, it's those 2 items, I mean.
Right.
And again, the hydrant thing, I thought was gonna be a delay waiting on the supply, but
Right.
if that's the fix, then that's a
Pretty quick.
couple hours' work,
So what do you think on time frame?
Weather permit, we very likely could address it over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll get a motion.
I'll make a motion that we extend this guaranteed 30 days and allow Mr. Wiles to complete the work.
Second.
Yeah, for completion of the project, and I second it.
Mr. Francis, you said 30?
I think 30, he said a couple weeks what it takes, so if we gave him 30 days.
Okay.
With him already having material.
Just so I'm clear. Okay.
A second.
Okay.
More pressing, and I know you've done put this to bed, but I would request a reconsideration of the timeline to complete the sidewalks in the Autumn Place. If we could just extend that through, at least through the summer of this coming year, at least we would have a decent season to make this happen. I don't know if y'all are familiar with this location, but it's not like these sidewalks are a highly used path. This is out fairly rural area. There's not a lot of, I don't know that I've ever went through there and seen foot traffic on the sidewalk. So it's not like it's a huge detriment or an issue with the folks that live there.
Well,
And
we've
it's a
already
it's a
voted on that.
multi-family.
It's still safety.
But I would make that request for reconsideration of the timeline for that.
Well, for the
completion.
Banyans. Which one you say?
No, he said the
Autumn.
Autumn Place.
Autumn. We've already voted on that.
I don't have it.
Can I need a vote on the Banyans. For the Banyans, the 30 days one, Commissioner Shu,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Francis,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Miles,
Yes.
Commissioner Still.
Yes.
Okay.
Y'all don't want to consider like through May for him? To reconsider that?
Presented what
With
now?
Kevin's input, the only thing I think we should consider is a pathway where there's no residential like this bottom corner, where there's no residential on that entire bottom side. I can't read that street name down there, Tyler.
Autumn leaf.
Yeah, but on the bottom side, in consideration, it's, you know, what Kevin, his recommendation would be. Now, everything else I think needs to be completed because the location of all the other residential units are so close to each other. In the bottom section, if you wanted to give an extension on time, but again, it goes back to, we've asked, and it's not been done, and it's not been done, it's not been done.
Okay.
Now, maybe in the future, if work is progressing and Kevin's staff comes back and says, hey, they're hitting these goals for us, maybe he can come back and ask, you know, for the rest of it, an extension. But right now, we have nothing, no guarantee from anybody that the work's even going to begin, because based on past history, nothing's been done. So that's my input and thoughts on that.
Okay.
If reconsideration is occurring here, step in if I'm out of line, but if a reconsideration of the vote as a recommendation, I just looked up here and saw this after your comment. If you want something until we can get it all, you could propose bringing this sidewalk down and creating the crosswalks here. And those would have to be striped to access this side of the sidewalk, so that these folks could actually come and meander in and out of the subdivision. Now, this one is built, naturally, it should be able to go down here and cross and then come back up. But that would be a Band-Aid to allow these folks to come and cross with the sidewalk, and perhaps make sure that we have crosswalks at these intersections. If you would like to entertain that, you know, that would be a substantial amount
Mr. Causey?
of
What does that plat show? It shows a sidewalk. And when was that put through? 2007? Have we got a sidewalk? Those people in that subdivision have sat there for all those years without a sidewalk, without hydrants that worked well. I think,
In
I don't want to
2000,
reconsider it.
in 2002, when this was reviewed, all of that on the outside perimeter, with the exception of these first two buildings at the bottom of the screen, weren't there. That's all been constructed since 2002, and every bit of that in that middle. has been moving forward, I guess is my point. It's not been stagnant. There's been quite a bit of activity.
Yeah.
It's just,
Does anybody want to make a motion to change it? Because if not, it's dead. Okay,
Okay.
there we go. Okay,
Thank you.
we done?
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay,
Kevin?
Number 10 will be the last one that I'll represent, will be the beginnings construction guarantee. Mr. Dodson has assured me that that is complete and has passed on inspection, so we would require a motion for the release of that.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion, we release the construction guarantee for the beginnings subdivision.
okay. Commissioner Shu?
Yes.
Commissioner Short?
Yes.
Commissioner Francis?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Miles?
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so
Only
much.
comment I've got, can I just comment a second? I want to comment on, at the last commission meeting, the commissioners wanted to have a meeting with us on short-term rentals, because there was some real question about it, we knew about the fee would come in and hit, and there was one other item too, about the rentals that people didn't own, but they just rented them. Oh, and the distance between them. We had 500 feet, and I think, they wanted more like 1,000 feet between them. And that's become an issue in Lexington now, I know.
They also wanted the issue about the cars.
Yeah, car
That
and a
was the big
half
one,
is what
was
they.
the cars,
the
1.5
wording on it.
cars per bedroom.
Yes.
So that was the
We were
one that-
using the apartment.
But there were items. So have we
Compensation.
settled for a meeting?
They haven't said that.
There's not a date set yet, but the earliest it'll be is January, given the schedule.
January?
Yes,
And it'll be a workshop like that.
yes.
So you all need to know about that.
Other business?
Can we do something, ask codes to check into the Glenton? I'm not familiar what's going on there, but he's right.
Commissioners, I think the commissioners there, that's before them on that.
Is it?
Okay.
It's beginning to have real problems now. Some of the railings falling off, other things.
Yeah, they're aware of it. Director's report?
So you may know John McIntosh, who will soon be retiring, may have mentioned, but sometime around next August, we will lose John of about 27 years. He is our head GIS guy, and he has been there since he's been here. So real quick, we're going to be doing some lateral movements within my department, and there'll be some changes coming up. We're litigating those kind of things and allocating with staff. We are looking into some multiple zone change requests on our own accord. There's some things throughout the city that I would like to see changed, fixed, if you will. It's been advised to me that before we just bring one, we bring several, so that you may see several as a courtesy by the city. Now, naturally, we do all the notifications and things, but that's coming down the pipeline that could be addressed. And we didn't get formal introduction, but I like to brag on all of my staff. Mr. David Dodson here, it's the first time you've seen him. He is one half of my field inspectors, and he does a great job. He stepped in, he is what I call greenhorn. He's my latest and greatest of the addition, and he has stepped in, boots hit the ground, took off. He single-handedly is spearheading everything that you're hearing about these clearing credit issues. So I'm really excited because I wanted that a long time ago, and now I'm living vicariously through David. And so I'm very proud of him, and I'd like to point out where a good job is being done. So, other than that, that's all I have.
Anything else?
No, sir.
I get a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay.
We all second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
when he gets that cut off, it's two things. David. You can. It's two things I think bring all this